السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أرحب أنا علي الشمري بالحضور الكرام نيابة عن المركز الوطني للتعليم الإلكتروني من العاصمة الرياض بالمملكة العربية السعودية. هذه الندوة الافتراضية بالتعاون مع معهد ديجيبن للتكنولوجيا تحت عنوان ثورة الألعاب والرياضات الإلكترونية في التعليم والتعلم. في هذه الندوة نستعرض التأثيرات المتنوعة للرياضات الإلكترونية والألعاب على التعليم الرقمي والتطوير الشخصي، وتوفير رؤى قابلة للتنفيذ للمعلمين والمهنيين للاستفادة بشكل فعال من الرياضات الإلكترونية والألعاب في البيئات التعليمية. بالإضافة إلى ذلك نستعرض دمج الرياضات الإلكترونية والألعاب في التعليم الرقمي ودورها في تعليم العلوم والتكنولوجيا والهندسة والرياضيات. كما أننا سنناقش دور الألعاب في تعزيز المهارات والتنوع والشمولية ورفاهية المتعلمين. للتنويه ستكون الترجمة الفورية للغة العربية متاحة خلال هذه الندوة، وبإمكانكم الضغط على أيقونة الترجمة أسفل الشاشة. Greetings from the National E-Learning Center in Riyadh, the capital of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We are delighted to welcome each participant in today's webinar on Revolutionizing Education through Esports and Gaming, in collaboration with Digipen Institute of Technology. The aim of this webinar is to explore the diverse impacts of esports and gaming on digital learning and personal development, and to provide actionable insights for educators and professionals on effectively leveraging esports and gaming in educational settings. Additionally, this webinar will review the integration of esports and gaming in digital learning, their role in teaching STEM or STEAM, curriculum development, skill enhancement, diversity, inclusion, and learner well-being. I am Dr. Al-Shamari, the Dean of E-Learning at University of Tabuk. I'm a specialist in game design and game development pedagogy with a particular focus on serious gaming and its application in educational contexts, as well as cryptology. We're delighted to have with us the Senior Executive Vice President of Digipen Institute of Technology, Mr. Raymond Yen. Mr. Yen has worked in the realm of digital interactive technology since 1990. He played a crucial role in establishing Nintendo software technology. We are also delighted to welcome Dr. Hanan Makki, video game expert at the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology. We thank these distinguished speakers for joining us today. Well, first of all, let's begin by exploring the reasons behind the rising of video games and esports in education. Why video games? And please allow me to share my screen very quick and to go over today's presentation. So why video games? Well, there are multiple reasons why we are focusing on video games, gaming, and esports. Perhaps gaming have become the universal language that everybody speaks today. It connects kids, teenagers, adults across diverse backgrounds and individual differences. Today's generations embraces diverse and innovative approaches to learning. Our learners today are completely different than the previous generations. For example, they like to have control. They like to have autonomy. They want to decide what to learn and how to learn it. They prefer learning through social interaction and teamwork. They are very inclusive. They highly proficient with digital technology. They are innovative thinkers, risk takers, and adaptive to uncertainty. So we have, like I said, a lot of reasons why video games and why gaming and why esports have become the language, the medium that will impact learning and shift learning to a new paradigm. In Saudi Arabia, for example, we have a lot of enablers that make video games very powerful tools for educational purposes. For example, 67% of the population identify themselves as gamers, whether they play PC, PS, or consoles or mobile games, they identify themselves as gamers. The majority of them are students, like whether higher education students or K-12 students. And also, one of the biggest enablers that we have is in 2022, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman launched the National Gaming and Esports Strategy, which aims to position Saudi Arabia as the global hub for gaming by 2023. It aims to contribute about 50 billion Saudi riyals to the GDP, create about 39,000 new jobs in gaming, especially because the gaming industry is very wide. It has a wide variety of jobs, and I'm pretty sure our panelists today will go over some of the jobs involved in the gaming industry. produce about 30 plus competitive games in the local studios. So we have big enablers that we can use in order to make sure that video games will change the paradigm of education. Globally speaking, video games and gaming industry is one of the biggest industries in the world. For example, the market revenue in 2024 is $282 billion, expected to reach about $363 billion by 2027, with the growth rate about 8%. The user base is expected to reach or to hit 1.4 billion users by 2027. So we have very strong user base in this industry, which makes it very helpful and potential for us as educators and professionals to use this medium to achieve learning outcomes and also to teach our students some of the skills that will be needed in the future. Now, again, like I said, this makes video games or gaming the language that everybody speaks, starting from kids, teenagers, and of course, older kids. Now, video games or gaming and esports in education, by integrating entertainment in general with education, the use of gaming and esports in a classroom enriches instructional methods for more engaging learning experiences, motivates students through immersive and meaningful interactions, facilitates self-regulated learning across diverse subjects, empowering students to take charge of their education. And it has become the trend right now in instructional technology and in education in general. Now, before we dig deeper, I must focus on some of the myths that some people, or some of the misconceptions that some people may have about gaming and esports. Perhaps the most important one is video games encourage isolation, which is, I believe, it's not true. Most of the esports games right now, they are multiplayer. People have to play in teams, they have to form teams, and they have to play against each other. And while they form their teams, they have to develop a lot of communication skills and team-based working skills. For example, if you think of any multiplayer game, like Overwatch, for example, 5 versus 5, 2 teams, okay? In your team, you have to select your role, whether you are DPS, whether you are tank, whether you are support, and you have to stick with this role, and you have to play as a team. You have to support, for example, if you are a support, you have to heal your team members. So you have to take care of this. You cannot change your role. You cannot be the leader. You cannot dominate the game. You have to sacrifice in order to make sure that your team wins, because if your team wins, then you will win. So I would say esports and video games actually encourage teamwork and encourage a lot of communication skills. Another myth that is serious games are not attractive, I would say, with the advanced technology that we have right now, with the gaming engines that we have right now, I would say this is a myth. Again, we have a lot of examples of serious games that are very attractive and can compete against commercial games. Games can replace teachers. Again, that's another myth. It's just like technology in general. Technology cannot replace teachers. However, teachers who use technology will replace teachers who do not use technologies. Only educational games have value. I would say, again, that's a myth. Even commercial games, for example, we have a lot of cases where professors and teachers have used commercial games that are meant to be fun only for educational purposes. We had a case of a professor who used Assassin's Creed. Well, I don't know how many of you have played Assassin's Creed, but it never meant to be an educational game. But they used Assassin's Creed to teach architecture, especially during the French Revolution. Another case where a history professor used Assassin's Creed to teach his students more information about the Civil War in the United States. Video games cause violent behavior. Again, I would say that's a myth. We don't have a single, let's say, study that can conclude that. Up to the best of my knowledge, most of the studies that have claimed or developed this claim, they were not true experimental design, because if you want to say this A causes B, you have to have a cause-effect relationship. You have to have a true experimental design. I did a study in 2014, and I believe like most of the studies, I found that most of the studies that investigated whether video games can cause violence, most of them actually were not true experimental design. However, some researchers, when they developed a study or using a true experimental design, they found the opposite. Even violent games, they teach you what violence means. They teach you what justice means. They don't teach you how to become a bad person or a violent person. You must be a gamer to develop a video game. That's also not true because, again, our panelists today will talk about some of the roles involved in the gaming industry. We have a wide variety of roles. You can be a script writer, you can be concept designer, you can be an animator, you can be rigger, you can be music composer, you can be a computer programmer. So you don't have to be a gamer. Of course, being a gamer itself will help you to come up with attractive games, but that's not a must thing that you have to have. You have to have big teams in order to develop a game. Again, we have seen a lot of games that were developed by indie teams, like small teams, using assets and using some of the gaming engines available right now for free. Esports lack career opportunities. Again, I think that's a myth. Not everybody in the esports industry needs to be or aims to be a pro player. You can join this industry through different career opportunities. You can be a caster, you can be a coach, you can be a team manager, you can be performance analyst, you can be event organizer. There are multiple jobs you can use if you are interested in esports in general. And of course, you can be a pro player. So it's not only about pro playing. Playing esports is unhealthy. If you visit any of the training centers or academies in esports, probably most of them, you will find that they have gym over there, and they have to ask their players to exercise from time to time because they have to take care of their body, their mental health, their body. They have to sleep well, they have to eat well, their nutrition. So, and I think most esport players, when they join their teams or their clubs, the first message that they receive is, in order to join this industry, in order to be a pro player, you have to sacrifice. The sacrifices we are talking about, you have to sacrifice your unhealthy habits. Again, you have to sleep well, you have to take care of your body, you have to develop like a good mental health status. So I would say playing esports is unhealthy. That's also a myth. So now I think it's the time to talk about some of the considerations when building esports and gaming curricula in schools. And I'm going to move to Raymond Yan. What are some of the key considerations when building esports and gaming curricula in schools? And how can educators ensure that these programs are both engaging and educationally sound? Raymond?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Salam alaikum. Very pleased to be here with you, and thank you for the question. First of all, I think I think it's really important to understand that integrating game development into an educational experience for a student is really a great learning vehicle. And Dr. Ali, are you going to share my slides, or am I showing my own slides? Oh, here we go. Okay, so thank you so much. At the end of the day, when we talk about what is a video game, when we're doing esports, I mean, the software that we're using is actually very sophisticated, believe it or not. You're talking about gaming experiences that have amazing graphics, 3D graphics, 2D graphics that have to be created by very talented artists. It has to have animation, has to have visual effects, has to have music, has to have sound. The technology itself has to be able to account for the desires of the player to be able to move left and right, to shoot, to jump, to collect things, and has to be able to allow the player to be able to communicate in real time, to be able to have amazing sort of almost educational theory integrated, because many games, the player doesn't want to read a manual, right? So we have to start by teaching them what is the game. We have to assess their skills to see if they're ready to move on. So the point here is that there's many different areas when we talk about making a game that have to be addressed. And again, not only is there sort of the hard skills, the technical skills, the creative skills, but there's also the soft skills that Dr. Ali sort of alluded to. There's leadership components that have to be addressed. And certainly when it comes to developing games, strong critical thinking skills, problem solving. Again, you're trying to get to develop a product that is very sophisticated. You're working with, artists, trying to work with programmers, trying to work with designers, trying to work with musicians. So those communication skills are really important. And finally, the economy is, or looking for a career opportunity. There's so many chances out there in arts, in science and technology, in psychology, even economics. These games that we're producing really do provide an interesting career opportunity for many young people who obviously have grown up with this technology and are looking to get onto that side. So the idea of a learning vehicle is that we can actually, in order to get people to be able to do this, it actually sort of encourages them to dive deeper into the academic subjects. So, as was mentioned in the introduction, I was the former head of art and design at Nintendo for many years, and people always ask me, that must have been really fun. And I can tell you, it was never fun. It was very, very hard work, but I enjoyed that work. And I think, by providing this type of opportunity, it exposes the students not only potentially to the skills that they might need to develop for this industry, but actually beyond that. Many graduates from DigiPen actually go on to work they don't go into the game industry, but they take the skills that they learned to develop this type of software and go to work for companies like Amazon and Microsoft. So maybe next slide, Ali. So just so you have an idea, this slide, just if you look at the different type of disciplines, I'm just putting up the main ones here. There are other ones I'm not even accounting for, but you can see that, if we're talking about game programming, this is not just learning about a language. We have to learn about algorithms. We have to learn about data structures, or as artists, we have to learn about visual design. How do we actually make a character look attractive? How do we make the environments look real? That involves understanding perspective and color. If you talk about the music side, how can we create emotion through the sound and music that we create? How can we make sure that the sound effects, again, create an environment for us that is really believable? So you're going to have to understand rhythm. You're going to have to understand music theory. You're going to have to understand, like, those topics are absolutely critical for what we do in the game industry. And then there's those the other ones on the bottom. You can see from a project management perspective, we are making a very sophisticated product being produced by different people from different disciplines. So we have to teach different methodologies of how we keep organized, how do we make sure that the files are managed properly. And from a business perspective, we can talk about marketing, we can talk about business practices, we can talk about contracts. And then, of course, esports, the idea of being able to learn how to organize events, how to manage a team, how to broadcast, right? Whether you're a streamer and you have to be able to talk to the camera and to have the production, the understanding of production, so that you can edit things together with music and so forth. So the point of this slide here is just to show you just the breadth of topics that you can bring to the table. And because game development, games are played by almost everybody, you have that sort of way to open up the door for students to be able to engage in these kinds of academic topics. Next slide. And so I think it is important, though, and I work with a lot of schools. I've been involved with training for about 30 years now, and I can tell you, working with a lot of elementary school, high schools, university educators that are interested in bringing this in, they do have misconceptions about it. Maybe they don't know anything about how to teach game development. And so I think it's really important to understand, probably the biggest misconception that I hear constantly is that the administrators just think it's about teaching a particular software, right? We're going to use Unity, we're going to use Unreal, we're going to use Godot, we're going to use Scratch. The reality is, it's kind of like using a word processor. If you want to teach writing to kids, it's not just it's really not about learning how to use Microsoft Word, right? I mean, we can use any word processor. We can even use pen and ink. We can use a quill, right? I don't think Shakespeare had access to a word processor. So what I really always recommend to educators is, first of all, recognize that the opportunity to teach game development extends far, 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 far beyond just learning a tool. The tools themselves, and I'll talk about that later, is they're so available today. You have kids at home on machines, on computers, that they can make games at home, right? It's very, very open to people today. So I think that's really key. We don't just want to teach them how Microsoft Word works. We ultimately want them to understand how to write well. That means they have to understand, the parts of speech. They have to understand the structure of a sentence, the structure of a paragraph. How do we do the research? All of that has to be worked out. Well, for gaming, it's the same thing. So number one, don't just think about, oh, I'm just going to teach some software and that you're done. Because all you're going to end up with, again, just like a word processor, if I don't understand those other aspects of it, I'm just going to have gibberish. I'm going to have content that nobody's going to care about. So for us, it is really important as educators to understand that, like a word processor, we don't want to just focus on teaching the tool, we want to teach the process. And then the other things are pretty straightforward, right? I think game development, because there is so much, so many different areas that we can touch on as educators, we don't want to take a first, sort of that one size fits all approach, okay, everybody, let's all do the same thing at the same time. This allows for a much more organic approach, something that allows you to touch on the specific interests of a specific student. So of course, we have to have course outcomes. We have to have those types of targets to hit, the types of skills that we want everybody to develop. But the way that they can express, the way that they can show their competencies is quite varied. So we always recommend a differentiated approach. Often, administrators are worried about the cost. What about all the computers, and do I need special equipment? The answer is no. If you have a computer lab, if the kids have access to any type of computer platform today, it's very likely that you can actually offer a program in terms of the tools and the software that are often low or no cost. So it's never been a better time. And I would also say that the type of training that you might need as an educator is, you can get that quite easily. You don't have to get a PhD in game development to be able to do this type of thing. There's lots of resources available about curriculum, about outcomes, frameworks, things like that we need as educators to make sure that things are really planned for. And finally, the last thing just to mention is really just understand that you can't just take a teacher, throw the teacher in a classroom with some software, and then, I'm done, right? Most educators do not come from game development. So there's training support that's required at the beginning. There's ongoing support that, especially as students start to engage, they may want to make a different kind of game from the other kids. They may want to, it really, really depends. And so I think as educators, we have to remember that just as if we were teaching an engineering program or some kind of auto body repair program, it's not just create the lab and whatnot. It's like any other class. It really does require ongoing support. So.
Okay. So Raymond, one of the observations that I always see when people try to implement game design curriculum, they focus more on gaming programming. So they assume that most of their students will just learn C++ or C# and then try to link it with the gaming engine. Then they come up with games. What are some of the other skills that we need to focus on when we write our curriculum, when we state our learning outcomes?
Well, I think it's, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to recognize the opportunity that we have. You're right. When a lot of people think about game development, they think about programming. And that's, of course, a very important aspect of it, right? In our case, our platform is on a computer, and we have to be able to talk to the computer about what we want. So the role of the programmer is really key. But our programmers, if I just look at that side of it, it is much more than learning a programming language. In fact, for us, at DigiPen, in offering our undergrad and graduate level degrees, if you look at the actual structure of the content, you will find that there's actually very little in terms of programming languages, right? The focus is the math that's involved. How do we draw these amazing graphics on, how does the computer generate those graphics, the shadows, the physics that's involved? So they do have to study physics. They have to understand light. They have to understand dynamics. When you're looking at these different areas, the computer science side is actually the programming component that you need is actually very little. And in fact, as time goes on, the tools are becoming more and more easier to implement it's a lot more easier to implement things like character animations, to be able to have situations where, again, most games, there's a real-time interactive component. So when I say go left, the character immediately starts to go to the left. When I throw something, when I shoot something, everything has to happen in real time. So, from a computer science perspective, it is certainly much more than the programming language. And the students have to, actually at DigiPen, the students effectively earn a math minor because there's considerable math that's involved, whether it's linear algebra and calculus and things like that. For the artists, foundational skills. So if you're a art, educator, you may not have to cover any programming. It's really about how do we create characters that are fun to look at, that are attractive. I think the challenge for artists in the game industry is that our artwork is not just for the sake of art. It is a functional, critical element that provides the player with feedback as to what's going on. What's the environment like? What's the mood that we want to set? All of that requires the artist to be able to draw, to be able to understand line quality, to be able to understand color theory. How do we mix colors? How do we make an environment look warmer or cooler? How do we bring that environment to life with environmental animation? So there's that component. And of course, music, from a design perspective, how do we actually make environments and levels? So you're sort of the architect of the experience. How do you make it engaging, whether it's a Pac-Man game all the way to a full 3D game? So there are many different aspects that, again, I look at it not so much as what are the minimum things I need to incorporate, but starting really with what are the sort of underlying academic skills that we would like to apply or that we would like the student to learn. And then we can bring game development to the table and say, well, if you're really interested in painting, let's make a background for a game, or you're really interested in even in sculpting, we can bring that digitally to the table. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It answers my question. And it also leads me to another question. Raymond, if you can share with us any successful examples or case studies where schools have effectively implemented such curricula, whether in game design or game development or esports.
Sure. Well, I don't know how many of you in the audience actually know about DigiPen, but DigiPen, we started teaching game development back in '92. So I'm one of the old guys.
I know it because I applied to do my internship over there when I did my PhD.
Oh, there you go. So, DigiPen absolutely embraces this idea of a learning vehicle. Our entire university, which we have a campus in the United States, we have a campus in Singapore, we have a campus in Spain. I'm currently working in Saudi to bring our campus there. But, initially, because of our relationship with Nintendo, people called us Mario University at the beginning. We were one of the first schools in the world to offer a degree program. And that's where it wasn't a trade school though. It wasn't an art school. It was a place where you could come and you can do a very, very in-depth level of study to do what? To become a game artist, to become a programmer, to become a designer, to become a musician, to be a computer engineer. And so this idea of, we took it to the extreme. Our entire university uses game development as a learning vehicle. And again, we've taught thousands and thousands and thousands of kids, students from all over the world who have come. Why? Because they want to get into this industry. What's really interesting is that a large percentage of our graduates actually don't end up in the game industry. As artists, they can be working on children's book illustration. They can work in other areas, commercial art production. The programmers are working for companies like Amazon and Microsoft. I mean, I myself, I have my own kids. I have a number of them that have actually gone to DigiPen and have, they are working at the Amazons. So we do that at the university level. And I also work at the K-12 level. So I work with elementary, middle, and high school, where we are actually working very, very closely with the public school system to offer not only introductory type of workshops that are targeted at groups, like we have some that are targeted at female students only, to try and encourage them to get into this sector. We also have programs that are targeting students that are on spectrum. We have programs that are targeting students in underserved communities. We've worked with many organizations like the National Urban League in the United States, where we are working with underserved, communities in very many of the cities that are here. So, and that will extend all the way up to the high school level, where the students are now very serious about wanting to participate in this field. So we basically teach them college and high school, where they are taking first year college level, courses in art, in computer science, in music, in game design, psychology, education, all these different topics. These students come every day for half a day. They spend 2.5 hours of their school day with us, learning about how they can learn, apply the computer science concept towards making games. So yes, I'm an absolute believer in this. I think we've seen a tremendous amount of success, particularly when I talk about some of these other groups of students, like I've mentioned, a large percentage of the students that come to us from the, for the high school program that I just mentioned, they have what are called IEP, individual education plans, which means these are students that are struggling in a traditional school environment. They're not paying attention, they're not getting the work done. But in our case, these students actually thrive because of the fact that they have a natural interest in this topic. They're motivated because, oh, I want to make my character move to the right. Well, okay, great. I'm going to teach you about vectors. I have to teach you a bit of math. And they can, because they can see that direct correlation between the theory and the application. I don't know that it's fun for them, but they're engaged to do the work because they know that once they understand how a vector works, how we implement that, they can make that character move. They can make the animation play. They can play the sound effect. They can detect when the enemy character is hit by, by a weapon. So, there are so many stories that we see every day where it engages those students. And I think more than anything, helps them feel empowered. I'm not that stupid. I can figure this out. I actually like this math. It's really interesting. I never knew I could draw. The students that come to us, they don't have this kind of background. So definitely, if you ever have a chance, and I will say, this is my 4th year now working in the kingdom. And magically, it seems that Saudi students can also learn this. So it's very universal. We are working with Dareya to bring this middle and high school programs to those kids. We have been working with university graduates to teach them about game development, to help them pursue a career. And we work with NEOM, we work with Ithra Academy. For me, I absolutely believe that this is something that, this topic can be utilized by all educators all over the world, because we've seen it. I've seen it, and definitely it makes an impact. When you can take an individual student who feels down about themselves, who doesn't feel that they can learn this, that they're not smart enough, and you can open up the door with games, which is something that they know about, and you say, well, what would you like to learn about? And you can give them that choice, right? Oh, I'm interested in programming, or I'm interested in drawing. I've always liked to, doodle. So amazing opportunities that, I'm really glad that all of you are here to learn about, because I think this is something that certainly the Saudi students can benefit from.
Thank you so much, Raymond. I think one of the most important takeaways that, just like you mentioned, when we implement game design curriculum, or let's say esports curriculum, the skills that students can learn from such curriculum can be translated into to real-world applications for future careers. It doesn't have to be in the gaming industry, but can be translated to other future careers as well. So I think the next topic will be very interesting. We are going to move and talk about esports, gaming, and STEM or STEAM education. Now, before we go there, I think it's very important to clarify the distinction between 2 key terms that are often used interchangeably, like gaming and esports. Sometimes people confuse gaming with esports. So gaming refers to playing video games for entertainment or leisure, which can be done like individually or socially. Like anyone who plays video games can be considered a gamer. I mean, of course, the definition is deeper, but that's what we mean by gaming, playing video games. Now, esports, on the other hand, is a competitive form of gaming with individuals or teams participating in organized competitions. So that's a huge difference, or let's say the main difference between esports and gaming. And this leads me also to Dr. Hanan. I know you are a specialist in serious gaming, which, by the way, I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan of the term serious gaming. It makes it sound like this game is serious, don't play it. You know what I mean? I understand the term, but before we dive into that, Dr. Hanan, usually people when they implement game design curriculum, or let's say esports curriculum, or when they integrate the gaming or esports curriculum to into education, usually they use the constructionist approach or the instructionist approach. So my question for you is, especially when there is a huge focus on STEM or STEAM education, how do esports and gaming contribute to STEM or STEAM learning? Are there specific skills or concepts in STEM or STEAM that students can develop through gaming or esports?
Yeah, this is quite, it's kind of need another session to, explain in depth the difference between STEM or STEMA or STEAM and STEMA. That one of the thing we kind of started with the slide, I guess, so we can show, and it started with the STEM. STEM is anything related to science and technology. And that is STEM, yeah. And STEMA, or the well-known term is STEAM. It's more integrating like science with art. So everything in STEM plus art. And it's really important to, there is no wrong or it's different, two different approaches in education, they are using it. But STEAM, it's something quite new compared to STEM. STEAM, it's how to make it more creative, more immersive, and integrating more with art rather just with science and technology. So when we started with esport players often play analysis game data here to improve their performance, and this is when skills and particularly data analysis in STEM career. Esports here, when they are playing, there is certain I would say like more things they learning through playing games, and not you can't like using it or find it more in like traditional education. And this is the powerful of using or playing games. One of the things as well, it's the strategy or puzzle games that demand players to tackle certain or analytical skills, or maybe problem solving if you are talking about a strategy or like RPG games. And I know people like when you're talking about RPG games or strategy games, let's talk about League of Legends. They think it's like, as you mentioned, Dr. Ali, encourage, being aggressive and, certain behaviors like negative behaviors and so on. But actually with the studies, it's proved that they're using it as a tool of stress relief, which was what we will talk about more in depth later. That kind of would say in gaming as well, especially for kids, and I've seen this with autistic children, which was my PhD in developing serious game for autistic children. They keen on to play or even to develop through Minecraft. And Minecraft, it's as well encourage a student to and welcoming a student to go to programming or coding and learn about how to build environment and make it interactive and so on. So that kind of like two things is like you are learning from games, and at the same time is encourage you to go to decide which career path you wanted to go to, or maybe in early stage to decide which topic to want to go in depth with it. So and when you talk about e-sport and gaming, let's say it's talking about more like game developments as well. A lot of gamers are as well, they do game development from time to time as a hobby, or even they encourage them later on to be developers. And this is, we've seen it here in Saudi Arabia, the number of people who's playing video games. I know since I was a child, it's like almost like every house they have at least one who's gamer, or they game in general like regularly. And this is when they are like, I've seen like it will come eventually in Saudi Arabia that we will create our own games that reflect our heritage and culture and so on. So that one of the things, like maybe just to sum up, STEM, it's more about the mathematics, technology, science, and so on, and it's just related to science field. There is no art in it. While STEAM or STEMA is more about integrating art, and we will talk it about in at the end about what is STEMA and what is more public figures in the field. Next slide, maybe. So yeah, this is a great example, like Mark, the CEO of Facebook. He interested in coding and technology from young age, and this is when he started programming, and invited him as well to develop like from playing games and goes to coding. Elon Musk and his early fascinating with video games and inspired and interested in technology and engineering later on in his nowadays field. While Jane, it's more, she's a director and writer, and she is more about problem solving, highlighting in STEM for learner, and it would be as well a great example for STEM through gaming. Next slide. Yeah, maybe here that is a good example from the kingdom. This is one of the initiatives. If you just Google it, you can find it here in Arabic, Minecraft التعليمية في السعودية. And it's really have different approaches and different methods they are using it. It's like for more like for gamers or e-sport, and for as well developing for game development. So this is good and targeting young age and people who's in schools, and you know, Minecraft, when it started playing it, for me, I'm a fan of 2D. I'm very old school when it's come about video game style. I love 2D puzzle games. And when I saw Minecraft, I was wondering why children, they are really obsessed with Minecraft. And the things, and maybe Raymond, you can help me out later on here. When I saw it as well in autistic children. I was, why? It's nothing, you know, interesting, because, you know, there's a lot of people, they prefer to have realistic and stylized art rather than, you know, pixel and very edgy style. So, and it's because the simplicity behind it. It's like you have different maybe tools or a few tools, and you created your own words, and, you know, trying different maybe mechanics or flow in the games, and you are competing, or maybe you just wanted to be yourself in the game. And this is what the beauty behind Minecraft, and easy to use it as well, and encourage children from there to develop or to learn coding. Yeah, that is a good example. We have it in the kingdom, especially for educators to learn about it, and parents. If there was like where to start and where to go, this would be a good page to look at. Just Google it, Minecraft التعليمية في السعودية, or maybe education Minecraft in Saudi. And this is when they are integrating both STEM and STEMA. And this is when we see people, for example, from who's interested in art and they don't know that much coding, they become actually interested to be a game designer, or maybe to learn a little bit of coding just to make things work in the game. Next, I think slide. I think, yeah, here's the figures for STEMA. I don't know. I wanted to ask, can we ask Doctor, have anyone played before? I will start first because it's one of my favorites. Journey or Children Flight? If you can type.
It's supposed to be in the chat.
Yeah, I'm opening the chat to see. I'm just allowed it a little bit of like a few seconds. Has anyone played it? Okay, no? One? Okay. All right, I will explain it. And this journey, it's my favorite because they play as well with, I came from a strong background in art. I did my bachelor degree in Islamic art. Most of my games inspired by culture and heritage. I love, integrating history as well in games in a way, make it fun and interesting and inviting new generation to learn about games. So, or about their own heritage, or even export our heritage to the globe. So journey, it has very, I will start with the mechanics. It has very interesting mechanics when you're flying. For me, I stopped back then. I stopped playing video games. I stopped in PlayStation 2. So joystick was not that common in games. And it was my brother was making fun of me. It was like, this is so easy to do. It's like to fly. I said, no, not easy for me, from old school, background when it's come about games. That just we using buttons. We didn't use joysticks. And I loved the immersiveness of these games. It invited me to use joysticks and play more for someone who's had something maybe more than 10 years not playing games, because I needed to focus on my career. But I was really see like that was another level when it's come about music, because I study color theory, and they implemented very well. So if something dark or a bit in gray shade, it has certain feelings, and they play with music. And this was like that was seeing it how it's moved and being immersive, because integrating here music, art, and the mechanics as well, when it's changing and you suddenly you have an enemy in the middle and the music changed. But at the same time, and this is, I haven't seen it that much in many games. What is make it unique between Journey and other games? Journey, you will have different type of people who's like people they wanted to play seasons, like they have different like seasons every 3 months. They have new season, and people who just wanted to go there and relax and play music, because they have certain like an instrument that you can collect it based on the season or maybe the achievement you did, and that is exclusive in that season. So, and people who's like musician, they started playing and composing music in the games, and they're just sitting, they're not really playing, and they have certain people around you and chatting with you. And this is, I've seen it, and it's really later on the games, which is called Children of Lights. And it's inspired by Journey. Journey is 2012, 2000, I think 22. I think it's COVID-19 when they started to promote it for the Children of Lights. And I saw the beauty of integrating different disciplines. And I know behind this, company, they have multidisciplinary developers and artists and musicians to create such experience. I have that experience. I don't play it every day. It's kind of be addicted as well, because you build really great relationships with people, around the world. I know about certain countries. I've never heard about it, but I know it about now. It's like what is happening. It's like we're talking about certain culture, food suddenly, but it wasn't just about games. And this is when you say in integrating art and focusing in art aspect. It's influenced as well by kind of Chinese culture, but they're putting it in more Western and modern way. And this is what I've seen it. Yeah, this is you keep, that it's come from that culture, but at the same time, it's suitable for nowadays people to play. We have Emmy as well. She is strong with narrative and character development. When you say people who play Uncharted, it's really beautiful, the puzzle behind it, and how they blend in the storytelling and the technical demands in the game design. And again, immersiveness here is the key word when it's come about having art and integrating it well with mechanics and music. And our maybe fan here, Metal Gear, I know a lot of people, they playing it. Hamza. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. We have at least one response. They say yes, they know about Journey. So Metal Gear, it's a great example, and Kojami, I really know, or Kojima. Sorry for my pronunciation. I don't speak Japanese. So when you're implementing an innovative gameplays and the story as well behind it and the cinematic, and here when we think about movie, and this is now nowadays games, it's multidisciplinary. You can see as well when it's come about cutscene, very beautiful cinematic techniques they are using it. It's came from movies, and you put it in a new, like in gaming, and we're talking about here gaming industry is quite new comparing to movie industry, and you have this beautiful integration from different discipline in one product like games, and caring about art as well. One of the things I wanted to mention why they talk about the stigma. Most of the artists usually are females. And when we're talking about game development, globally, the number of game developers like in males more, it's like they call it even male domain rather than females. So this is as well like an invitation as well for artists, and being, you know, we talk it about more in depth later on in this matter. So yeah, Mistema, art is really important, and I always wanted to have that to, especially to invite other culture and heritage through art and make something original. And this is would be good to use it, STEMA or STEAM.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanan. A great presentation about the STEM or STEAM education. But this also leads me to a question, and I think most educators and most like teachers ask this question: as a teacher or as an educator, how can I align game design or esports with the STEM or STEAM education outcomes?
It's really important. I've seen, like, this is what I would share like personal experience here. What we see, like I taught before in more than 3 years ago in the UK, and I've seen, you know, a lot of people, like, you know, they came from background like programming background. They don't have that skills in art, and here when is started to use AI through different understanding a little bit of like color theory. Color theory is really easy to learn because it's being implemented in many in media like movies, and let them to study this. Like as a developer, you don't need to know about it. It's how, like to be an artist to know how to make it. You needed to know the basic knowledge behind it. And this is what we've seen it in when it's come about color theories. You use it in interior design as well. Like, you know, you use, you know, light, like white is different when you're using it with yellow. And these, as maybe developers, or maybe if you are talking about science and you learn the art, or maybe the colors behind these and how it looks in shade, for example, in dark shade when it has light, and what kind of things can be created, that can be teaching it in that way. I remember in young age, I learned about how to mix colors, and why those colors, and why I'm using, for example, for the shade is darker and make it maybe brighter, and so on. Let's give an example here. For example, if you wanted to target a different audience, like children or adults. For children, you always focusing in more like light and bright colors, more cartoonish style, and so on. And when you talking about adults, they were more stylized, realistic. And in education, if you wanted to develop such, you know, let's say mechanics, and say, ask them who's going to play your games, why they are playing it. Okay, what kind of color do you think they are interested in? Invite and ask this question with them, especially if they are children. Children, they will immediately, they will respond, they will know, because they are children, they know what kind of colors. they can ask their peers as well. This is one another methods we use in it. And I believe you learn from peers more than you learn it from, instructor or educator, because, they have more freedom to talk and ask questions, maybe a little bit shy when they ask about instructors, especially in young age. For who's adult or maybe people in universities, do a little bit survey, investigate who's got kind of people wanted to play, for example, that kind of games. If you are developers, you haven't learned that much about art, do some research, inspire from other artists, don't recreate or reinvent the wheel. This is when it's come about programming. Let's see about artists, for example. Artists, they don't know that much about coding. There is a lot of platforms online you can learn from it. So maybe it would be good for educator to have for a session how to use that kind of softwares, because you have very beautiful maybe a character or environment, but a little bit of animation, and you need maybe animation sometimes, a little bit of coding, maybe not. But if you are wanted to move the characters, definitely you need it. And there is a lot of softwares or platforms online like Scratch and so on to start with. And although they use Scratch for young population, but still it's good for even adults to understand the logic behind coding. For when it's come about e-sport, I would recommend for them to learn this through as well movies and learn, for example, through certain games as well there. Some games like Journey, it's not it's not about esports, it's about relaxing and social interactive with certain people and so on. And it's good as well for them to try different genres instead of just focusing just with e-sport, because this has inspired them to articulate maybe later on while they are playing certain maybe methods of communication. They've seen it in different platforms or genres. They haven't seen it, for example, in esports. I know a lot of people, for example, that when they are playing, these days I'm playing Diablo, not that much, but from time to time. And I found, for example, the best communication for me to go through with is not with Diablo platform, it's with, for example, Discord. So this is when it's like, it is good as well to try different. For me, I play usually solo and platformer games, not like that much like Diablo. But when I entered that field, I felt there is sense of things I'm learning from there. I haven't learned earlier in early stage when it's come about game development by just playing with playing with Diablo.
So I think one of the messages that we have to send to all our educators and teachers who are interested in implementing esports and game design curriculum to their schools, it's very important to know that game design, esports, both of them are group-based learning, project-based learning, and they involve a lot of problem-based learning. So I think with both approaches, you will have a lot of opportunities to teach STEAM or STEM education skills. I think that's the most important thing that we have to focus on. So Dr. Hanan, beyond academics, okay, esports and gaming offer a lot of opportunities to develop broader skills, okay? So if we want to talk about some of the other skills that people can develop, what are the key skills that students can develop through participation in game design or esports programs? And how do these skills translate to, future careers? If we can just go over this very quick, we have time. I think that will explain it, and that will be very, very beneficial for our audience.
All right. Yeah. We already talked about this earlier about technical skills, strategic and critical thinking, and creativity, and previously. But here we will show some data that people, for example, 65% of the students involved in game design learn design coding, which is directly them to STEM. People who's as well like gamers or in e-sport, they have interest later on to go to a STEM field. And this is very, very interesting to see. Here is like it says, over 60% of e-sport players regularly engage in data analysis, as mentioned as well, and improve their performance. And this is really fascinating to see and how it is linked. One of the things as well, we've seen it with people who's playing RPG games. They are have multitasking skills more than people who's not playing these genres. Problem solving, and they take action immediately and they can think quickly. And this is, you can see more people who's playing e-sport rather than comparing to their peers who are not playing this e-sport. One of the skills as well is strategic and critical thinking. Esports and real-time strategic thinking, about 75% of players developing and enhance their problem solving, I mentioned it. And this is why, because you have a lot of things in the scene, you need to immediately to calculate it and take an action. And this is even in like gonna, or it's affect their real life. People who's playing video games and taking, you know, decisions because they're with certain, it's like faster than their peers not playing it. So games often require collaboration as well. People who's, I've seen this as well, who's playing like social, they are caring about others, and they can take sense of, you know, unity more than people who's playing solo games, or people's like just platformers and so on, because they needed to achieve one aim. They needed to collaborate to win in the game. So they have as well these, you can see the skills they develop it through playing games. For designers or game development in general, they as well, when it comes problem solving, I remember, and I love working with programmers, I can't see it here. It is difficult to work with artists because artists usually have high ego, their own style, they work. When they started to work alone. But for example, programmers, you can see that kind of characteristic. If they face any issues, they was like, okay, wow, it's a problem. And you know, they have really big smile in their face. I was like, why you are happy? Because there is a problem, I'm going to solve it. They always have that sense of, you know, responsibility. I will solve it and it will be mine to take care of it. For me as an artist, if I found any problem with, you know, with coding, as I get really irritated and so on. And this is that you can find it different characteristic between artists. Artists is more like there is no limit, everything is possible, and so on. With you know, creativity, but with programmers is more about logic and orders, and this is what is really the beauty about game development. Lastly, I'm not gonna it will be short. Creativity, when it's come about game design, it's, you needed to know the psychology of the players when you're playing, what kind of, you know, feeling you wanted to grab in certain scene or maybe certain level, what kind of how to make indicator in certain as well levels that indicate there is danger coming up. So this is play well with the psychology. You needed to know as a designer what is the player, what is the expectation behind it. Definitely as a designer, you needed to work with the target audience, do testing and see who's, you know, see what kind of feelings. Sometimes you're designing for certain feelings, but when you're testing it, then you discover is not what is expected. So creativity always there, because you needed to find and problem solving, you needed to find solution for certain area. It wasn't there when you started ideation, for example, stage, but later on in production you find maybe there is certain issues, and it's really important here, artists, developer, and designer to work together, for example, to make it immersive if you wanted to achieve such thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanan. And for our audience, our educators and teachers, like we mentioned earlier, beyond academics, esports and gaming offer a lot of opportunities for broader skills development. However, it's very important to know that facilitation is a key to implement this successfully. If you just ask your students to learn on their own, probably the outcomes could be desirable, could be not. Maybe students will use this approach to achieve their own, let's say, goals, which could be different than the intended learning outcomes that you are thinking of. An example that comes to my mind right now is a teacher who used one of the most popular games, Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. He used this game. I mean, this game can teach a lot of leadership skills, and he used it to teach his students leadership and management skills. Now, in this game, all you have to do is basically to build a theme park, and you want to make sure that you build this theme park to make sure that all your customers are happy, satisfied with your theme park. So you have to take care of all the components that needed to have a satisfying theme park. For example, you have to take care of the amusement over there, the restrooms, the trash cans, and so on. So one of the teams, like he divided his students into different teams, and he noticed that one of the teams, they had like very ugly theme park. However, they didn't have any unsatisfied customers, and he was like, how come your theme park is not as attractive as expected? At the same time, you don't have any unhappy customers. How come? And they were like, we do have unhappy customers, but we take care of them. And he was like, how come? Like, how do you take care of them? They were like, we go to the menu on the top corner here. We go to the menu, we see the unhappy customers, and then we drag them, and there's a lake over there, and we just drop them over there to the lake. It was like, you're drawing your customers? He was like, yeah, I mean, the game allows me to do it. So of course they did not achieve the learning outcomes that meant to be, but that happened because there was no facilitation behind the learning environment. So that's why facilitation is a crucial part of achieving both approaches, the instructionist or constructionist, gaming or esports. Now, Dr. Hanan, you mentioned a lot of skills through game design, game development, and esports. And I must also talk a little bit about esports and some of the skills that people can develop through esports. One of the things that people have to know is we have three components in the esports industry. We have what we call game-specific skills. Usually people in this track develop their gaming skills in one of the particular esports games. For example, Rocket League, Overwatch, Street Fighter, Valorant, and so on. So you can teach them how to be pro players in one of these games. So basically, you teach them how to level up in a particular game. That's what we call game-specific skills. For example, how to aim well, how to understand the maps, how to understand the techniques, the strategies of the game. Now, what we have something we call beyond the game. How to become a better person, how to develop some communication skills. Because like I said earlier, esports are team-based. So you have to develop some soft skills. You have to learn how to communicate well with your team members, how to work under pressure, how to deal with some of the challenges that your opponent can throw in front of you. Critical thinking, team working, resilience. So a lot of soft skills can be developed through what we call beyond the game track. Another thing is the career-specific training. Like I said, pro player is only one career in the esports. However, we have a lot of jobs, a lot of skills that people can develop through the career-specific training in esports. For example, how to become a caster, performance analyst, coach. So if you, as an educator, implement esports program in your school, you need to know that you can also ask other students to join this program as casters, as coaches, as team managers, as performance analysts, as streamers, as referees. So they have a lot of opportunities to learn a lot of skills through esports curriculum. So if we can just gonna go over some of the skills that people can learn or students can learn through esports curriculum, I would say critical thinking, teamwork and collaboration, leadership, problem solving, team management, adaptability, and hand-eye coordination, resilience, technical proficiency, and of course, global awareness. Now, I'm going to move to you, Raymond, and talk about understanding and overcoming the challenges, integrating challenges into in integrating esports and education. What are some of the primary challenges schools face when integrating gaming and esports into their programs, and how can educators and administrators overcome these challenges or obstacles?
Great. So, when I am consulting with schools about, implementing these types of programs, there are basically three main areas that I try and address with them that, because they need to be informed again about, we're all excited about the idea of bringing games into the school, but it's, there are some challenges. The first one, and probably the most critical one, is finding someone who's, qualified to teach this type of thing. Now, of course, it depends on how you are implementing, like what you're bringing to the table, and the goals that you're trying to achieve. I saw a question from Dr. Sinha. You were asking, I think, about math, and the idea that you would want to sort of find ways to make it more interesting to learn the math. I mean, there's so many different areas, right? You can talk about basic arithmetic. You can talk about algebra. You can talk about geometry. You can talk about trigonometry. You can talk about calculus. You can talk about linear algebra. So the first thing that you need to find is actually somebody who has that knowledge base in the math. And then from there, you want to find somebody who actually is just really interested in bringing a new approach to teaching it. So it's usually project-based, it's usually applied, and you have to find an instructor who's used to or who can be trained on how to take sort of a more of a project-based learning approach, somebody who understands how to take a competency-based approach. So the instructor piece, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who has game development experience, but they do have to have that underlying sort of academic experience. I saw another question about, can we do something with learning English or teaching English? And of course there is. You want somebody who can maybe take advantage of, the kid's interest in writing a story for a game, designing the background, identifying the background of a character or the location. So you can teach, you need somebody who understands the grammar, right? Who understands syntax, who understands how you can actually structure a story, right? The arc, the hero's journey. So the instructor is a critical part that you have to find. And I think probably the biggest piece of, to make sure that you have is somebody who just is interested in games. Right. I mean, you have to have somebody, because that's your in, that's the way you're opening the door. And if you can't bring to the table, like, oh yeah, I really like playing this game, like Dr. Hanan talked about everything from Minecraft to Metal Gear Solid, when you can actually bring that passion and interest, and when you can be the type of person who can actually be willing to say, look, I don't know that much about game development, but I do have an interest in story. I do have an interest in math. And let's take a look at how we can bring that, how we can apply these kind of concepts towards a project for a game. It's really wonderful. So, you have to, that's the challenge of the instructor. You've got to find somebody, you probably would have somebody who's sort of a subject matter expert in math and writing, but now that person also has to have an interest in gaming. That person has to have an interest in learning to learn. They want to learn. They have that, what do they call it, a growth mindset, to be able to do the research so that they can see how they can actually implement or integrate the gaming, esport and game development into the subject. Okay. Number two, this idea of, again, it's not just about the tool. I'm not just trying to make a little character move around the screen. I mean, that's not a game per se. There's a lot more involved. And I think the mistake that a lot of schools will do at the beginning is they just think moving a sprite around is enough, right? But, if you ask me to write an essay and all I do is I put just random words on the page, that's not going to be a very good essay, right? We're trying to tell a story. In the world of gaming, we're trying to create an experience. That experience, players have a high expectation. It doesn't mean that they look realistic. It doesn't mean that they are, huge, complicated games, but the game needs to be something that, what I always tell the teachers is you have to drive the students to create a complete product, right? So, you know, we don't want to leave anything half cooked, right? It's like, you're like, yes, the student is taking a cooking class. They put the meat into the pan, but they didn't cook it properly, right? You would want them to learn how to cook it properly, and not only cook it properly, but to taste good, right? Even if we're making just like a hamburger. So, you know, when it comes to integrating these types of projects into the classroom, we don't want to just say, oh, we taught the kids how to make a sprite move. We want to be able to say, oh, we taught the kids how to make something fun, right? So they are going to have to learn technical skills, but it's the, you know, for us making a game, it's about the player experience ultimately. And that might be a card game. That might be designing a board game. That might not even be a video game. But regardless, I think focusing the student on the quality of the product, I think is really big. And, you know, I think often administrators, educators, they're trying to do too much. They think that, you know, they need to teach your kids how to make a complex 3D game. They think, no, you know, I think what you have to do as you're doing the research is really think about your constraints. You know, I saw a question earlier about, you know, I would like to integrate this into the classroom, but I don't have a big budget. A lot of schools, a lot of teachers don't have a big budget, but thankfully there are many tools available that are effectively free. You know, you don't have to get Photoshop. There's tools like Krita that are free. You don't have to go and buy some expensive game engine. You know, tools like Unity and Scratch, and those are readily available to schools to be able to use, either just free, which is nice, or sometimes they have educational arrangements, right? So if you're a school, they will give you access to the software for free. So you want to think about your constraints and be realistic about it. How much time do you really have? If you only have 1 hour a week, or, you know, then the scope of what you do is, it's not that you can't teach game development, but what you're going to be able to do in 1 hour a week is very different than if you have, like in my case with the high school program, I go all the way to 2.5 hours every day. That's 540 hours of contact time over the course of the school year. So you can imagine how much I can accomplish. So, but I have to understand what that is. I have to understand the type of teachers that are available. I have to understand the resources and the support that I'm going to get from the administration. So, you know, ultimately, you've got to look at the constraints, and then you can think about, okay, well, what are the educational goals that I really want to try and achieve? Like, oh, I want the students to be able to ultimately write a short little narrative for the background of a video game. So if I only have, you know, a few hours, maybe they're just writing a topic sentence with some supporting ideas. So I think that's really important. Dr. Ali, the next slide. Sure. Let me see, what did I have? Okay, so really quickly, I mean, I know you're all educators, but one of the things that we always start with is first of all, we take a competency-based approach. So we don't believe in, again, not everybody moves forward at the same time. We want to make sure that they are able to move forward when they're ready, right? If you don't know all the letters of the alphabet, you cannot go and start writing. It's an entire story. So often, you know, teachers, sometimes they try and do shortcuts. They say, well, you know, the kids want to make something really more complex. I'm like, yeah, but they can't even, you know, they can't draw a realistic human being. They don't even understand how to make a line on the page, right? So what we do is we use reverse curriculum development. And this is really it fits very well with game development, because, you know, really what you're doing is you're first starting out is, you know, once you've identified your constraints of how much time and whatnot, then you can think about, okay, what do I want? You know, what skills do I want the student to have by the end of this particular project? And by understanding, okay, the goal is I want them to understand how to use basic arithmetic, to be able to do things like hit points, to be able to do currency in the game for them to, okay, so we understand that that's the key academic outcome that we want. So now we say, well, how are we going to measure whether the student understands that? Oh, okay, well, at the end of this project, the student will have implemented a very basic game that keeps track of how much health the player has or how much money the player has. And so we have a very clear target of the project that we want the kid to do. And that project could have multiple outcomes that we're trying to achieve, right? Once you understand that we want the student to make this kind of game with these kinds of elements, now we know what to teach. So by going in reverse, as opposed to most times it's like, oh, okay, here's some math content or something, and you're trying to move forward. Sometimes actually the final product does not necessarily hit the outcome. So for us, using a reverse curriculum development approach is really good. And there's lots of, like, this is not something I invented. There's lots of material. If you look online, you can find, there's an excellent book called Understanding by Design. And then there's many of them like that actually teach this process really well. Next slide. So again, there was a question about, how do I access the type of software? There are a lot of open educational resources, free. So this is not just tools. This is actually curriculum. There are books on game design that you can have access through, for free through Creative Commons licensing. You can download it, you can distribute it, you can put it in your learning management system. There's lots and lots of videos. YouTube is content rich in terms of topics, where you can say, well, okay, maybe it could be software related. So I want to learn how to add a character in Unity to my game. It could be the concept, how do we incorporate affordances and signifiers within the game so that the players understand what they're supposed to do. They can look at that little graphic and understand, oh, that's a health box, right? Oh, that's a weapon box. Oh, that's a, they can look at the graphic and identify the functionality that tool is supposed to provide. So there are, a lot. What's nice is that a lot of these videos, again, no cost or low cost if you want to go to something that you might find in Coursera or Udemy. But, there's really no need, especially if it's an introductory course. There is tons of content, very well explained, very well produced. I mean, that's what I tell the teachers. You ultimately want, especially as the students get older, you want them to learn how to learn. You don't want to spoon feed them everything. So often you can say, well, here's an interesting video on level design. I want you to watch it. And the nice thing is that the video, number one, is free. Number two, it's accessible from anywhere. So the student can watch it from home. They can watch it in the classroom. Number three, they actually are well produced. The audio quality, the script, there's graphics, it's very well thought out. And if the student misses a concept, like you think about in the classroom, if that's the case, they miss your lecture, it's gone, right? They won't be able to retrieve that. Whereas if it's a video, you deliver that kind of base content, it's really great. And so finally, again, there's curriculum that is available. Again, if you go and look for open education resources, you will find that other people have written syllabi, they've written course sequences, they've written frameworks that you can use as a basis. So you do not have to start from scratch. And I always recommend, for the instructors, this is where that growth mindset has to come in. You're going to have to sit in and learn how to do these things. So you have to have an interest in that. Okay. Next slide, Dr. Ali. So in terms of tools, you can see game engine wise, there's a variety of ones that you can use. I've used all of them. It really depends on the audience. If you're dealing with kids as young as 5, 6 years old, who can't read, then you might use a tool like Scratch. It's a visual block-based programming environment. It's free. It's web-based, so you don't have to install anything. And it also means that you can run it in a PC lab, like Windows Lab or Mac Lab, all the way up to, actual game engines that require you to do some scripting, perhaps using something like Lua or Python. Of course, there are platforms that you would be programming in C and C++, but there are so many, because I think many people have realized how amazing game development is to use as a learning vehicle. You find lots of tools. There are some platforms that they literally take the student step by step, filling in the academic content while the student is implementing the game functionality. From an art and music production perspective, all the tools are available at no cost, right? You don't have to spend lots of money on a monthly subscription for Adobe. You can use Krita. There's wonderful tools. They're maybe $5 at most, right? So all you have to do is do a search online. And definitely project management is something that a lot of teachers don't think about at all. And how to make a to-do list, how to prioritize those tasks. You can use tools like Trello. You don't have to get anything, expensive, like Jira, or Monday. But Trello is a great tool. It's if you've never seen it before, it's almost like having virtual index cards. So you write on index card each individual task, then you can put those tasks into columns. So this is the to-do column. This is the in-progress column. This is the complete column. And as the student finishes the tasks, they can move it across, right? They can even use it in a team environment where I can say, oh, Dr. Hanan, I want you to actually do the art. So when you're done, here's the task. When you're done, they can move it, she can move it across. So lots of tools for you to do. Again, the more complex of an experience you're trying to provide, then the more time you're going to have to prepare, right? I've already talked about the instructor. I think, without question, the knowledge, the foundational knowledge is usually pretty typical, right? I can go into a typical high school and it's likely I can find an English teacher, or I can find a math teacher, a science teacher. The question is, are they interested in learning more? Are they interested to be willing to stand in front of a classroom and say, look, I don't know everything about this particular topic, but I would love to learn with you. And so that is really important. And of course, just having that passion for games or animation, you've got to be able to talk the language a little bit. And trust me, the students will know if you are genuinely interested in it or not, right? They will spot you right away. But, I often run into, because there's, thousands and thousands and thousands of games. I don't go into the classroom claiming that I know every single game, right? And often the students say, oh, like I'll ask them, like, what game do you like to play? Oh, I like such and such a game. I say, I've never heard of that. Can you explain that to me? What do you like about that game? Is there anything frustrating about that game? So it's just a passion. Like I've been playing video games all my life. I grew up in the arcades. I ended up working at Nintendo. I'm still involved with game development. It never ends. And if you can bring that energy and that excitement, that's what you're trying to find, because that's what the students will hook into. Okay, I think that was the last slide there, Dr. Ali.
Yes.
Oh, maybe if I can add one thing. I saw a question about somebody who wanted to start esports. I love this topic. It's really fun. It's actually not that hard to do. You really want to make sure that you do some research though, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges is, if you're going to establish an esport team, you're going to have to decide what game are we going to kind of focus around, right? Or games. And you want to make sure it's age appropriate. You want to make sure that the content and all of that is really, appropriate for the students that you have. But, setting up something that's like an after school program or a club is the pathway that we generally will do. And we'll work with the teacher and we'll say, okay, this is what you need to think about. Do you have access to a lab? Are you expecting the students to bring their own computers? So you need those basic logistical pieces. And you have to think about the schedule. So you need to talk to administration. Can I have a classroom, after school access, for 1 hour or 2 hours? And then you can, once you have that infrastructure kind of in place, then you can start thinking about the kind of games. And Dr. Ali mentioned, I mean, if you need to know what esport game to try, talk to Dr. Ali. But Rocket League is a great one. League of Legends is a great one. There's so many. And, honestly, I think if you do the research and you survey the kids, depending on the age group that you're dealing with, they will have their own ideas, right? For sure. Because most of them, they're likely following esports, right? They already know which games, they already follow teams. So when you have that, you pick the game, then there are definitely, like here in the United States, we do have many leagues that you can join, high school leagues. And so there's usually a nominal fee. And then what they do is they pair up the teams. So you can say, oh, this school is playing this school on Saturday at this time, and the kids will log in and then they will play. And then the result of the game is actually recorded. So it's really like a sports league, and there's many different ones. I don't know if they have, Dr. Ali, is there such a thing in the kingdom right now? Is there an actually organized esport league?
I'm just going to add this, of course, if you want to do such programs in your schools, probably the first entity that you have to talk to is the Saudi Esports Federation. Just talk to them. Probably they have some curriculum that you can use, and also they can guide you through a lot of instructional materials and a lot of practices how to implement this program successfully. So Raymond, since we are running out of time, but there's one very important question I think we have to cover very quick, is from your point of view, what are some of the best practices for creating a welcoming environment for all students?
Well, I think that is really important. I mean, obviously, there can be situations where, there can, you want to avoid creating a toxic environment with name calling and things like that. So it's really important. I mean, you have, when it comes to gaming and game development and esports, you have a topic that has broad appeal. right? I mean, there are so many different kinds of games. Dr. Hanan talked about puzzle games. I like strategy games, and I like first-person shooter games. And so usually it's very important to set the ground rules that we're here to learn together, we're here to play together, and you know, we're going to compete, but we're going to play fairly. We're going to play to have fun. And I think establishing very, very strong, you know, rules at the beginning, not necessarily to be sort of negative about the whole thing, but you want to talk about how you can create a positive gaming experience. And that allows you, you know, because there is such a broad appeal, you can actually attract quite a diverse group of students. You can be very, very inclusive. You know, some of the kids that normally would not interact with each other, when you put them on an esport team, they're naturally, I mean, they're in a way, they're kind of meeting their tribe. They're with people that have a similar interest. And so you will have typically a student who's very quiet, who has social anxiety, who has all these kinds of things, all of a sudden in a gaming environment, really come to life, right? So it is, I think, critical to have that idea that we embrace all the differences that, you know, again, Dr. Ali, I think you talked about the different roles that we might play on a team, you know, like, oh, I'm going to be a tank, oh, I'm going to be the healer, I'm going to be the, you know, and that allows the different kinds of players to maybe step first into a role that they feel most comfortable, you know, and I think that's what's really wonderful about the game development and using esports in education, is that there's something for everybody. You know, you don't have to be the sporty person, you don't have to be the nerd, you don't have to be, no, it's however you, whatever game you like, however style you like to play, it's very likely that there is a way that you can engage that individual. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. So it's not only for nerds, right?
Definitely not. And, you know, I will say also from a game development perspective, you can quickly move beyond, you know, how do we use the tools and stuff. I mean, imagine that, I mean, I've done this many times. You see this in game jams. Often they'll put a theme on there, right? So it could be a game that they have to somehow, you know, we encourage them to create a game that has centered around maybe some kind of social issue. Maybe it's something where we're trying to promote empathy. Maybe it's a game theme where we're challenging stereotypes. Maybe, like, I mean, I think when you do that type of theme on games, it's not just, oh, let's just have a character that runs around and shoots things, but we want you to create a game experience that creates empathy for others who are trying to save the environment. I mean, I think when you can do that, it will inherently kind of engage students in a way that keeps them out of trouble. So, because they have an interest in trying to get that message across, even the young students that are involved with this, they always, I think we inherently want to do something that's good. And when you can put that theme into the game project, you know, they become very, very focused on that.
Thank you so much, Raymond. I know we are running out of time, but Dr. Hanan, I cannot end this presentation without asking this question. I think we have to discuss the health and well-being of learners participating in games and gaming and esports, because that's a very hot topic. From your perspective, what are the potential health risks associated with esports and gaming? And how can educators help students maintain a healthy balance? What are some of the best practices or guidelines that we can implement to ensure that? Dr. Hanan, you're on mute.
Here we are talking more with, or yeah, it's more like with adult, with parents and educators, because, you know, if you're talking with children is still like vulnerable group. So they needed, you know, guidance from their guardians or their parents. So health risk, it's like if you are just using computer, for example, for a long time, you needed to take care of certain things. The way you sit is needed to be, you know, comfortable chair. The level of the table is needed to be not very low, not very high. So it's needed to be with 90-degree with your hands, so to feel comfortable, and it's needed to be in the middle. This is even basic thing if you are going to do sewing, for example. The way you sit is really important. Here the study shows that 42 of sport players report an experience. And for me, I think it's most of them, even it's more than it's the way you are sit and for how long you are seated. While like 66 and 68 reported in pain in their wrist, and this is you can see a lot because they're using mouse, and they use it with certain rhythm, and the other hand is not moving. So you're after a while and sitting for more than what it should be, then you will have all of these issues.
I think, Dr. Hannah, if you allow me, I think one of the most important things that esports players have to do is they have to search for the right equipment for them. For example, there are some studies that have shown that office chairs, for example, are better than gaming chairs for pro players. That could be something, again, it's situational, so players maybe have to look for the best equipment for them.
Of course, if you're talking, for example, with mouse as well, you needed to have, gaming mouse. It's not any mouse because, it's more sophisticated, and the way the hand rests on the mouse, it's been studied, and it's been designed and specialized for gamers. This is really important. It is more important as well here, which is the next thing. It's reported in extended gaming. Here it's with blinking. People like when I've seen it this even with designer and artists, not just gamers, people who's working on on a screen, front of screen, and they doing designing, playing, and so on. They have an issue with not blinking like less 3 to 5 times less than usual people who's like when you are sitting or watching TV, for example. This is important as well to remind yourself. With this is really important too. You have, even if you don't wear glasses, you have protective screen, something you can put it in the screen. Some people, they just prefer to wear glasses to protect as well. This is really important because drinking water in this matter is really important, because get dehydrated from thing in front of the screen. One of the things is in our modern life as well, addiction to games. And this is, you can tickle it and see it more in children, because that behavior is easily can be tickled and observed. So it's 10 to 15% of gamers could exhibit signs of gaming addiction. And this is as well, if it's became really addiction, you needed to see, unfortunately, therapy to solve these issues, because they have this adrenaline in their body and they love the feeling and they want to keep it for long. Unfortunately, this will make you detach from social life, from do physical activities and so on, which is we will talk about it later. Professional gamers probably spend like long period, and they have maybe capacity, and this is because I know, and I've seen it and myself experience it, you didn't feel yourself while when you're playing and eating, and because you're not moving, not doing physical exercise. I've seen it more in COVID-19. A lot of people, they play games, they saw it in figures. The number of people playing games and downloading games is really high, but at the same time, because they didn't do any physical exercise or activities that can be a threat for their health. So this is like major. There is a many of risk in esports, but the most important thing is to observe yourself as a gamers, how long you have been sitting and what it should be. If you are adults or children, children recommended to stay, like for children, unfortunately, some people who's like children below, like baby here, below 2 years old, they're not recommended to use devices, not recommended to play games. But we've seen it nowadays, unfortunately. People, for example, or children from 2 to 4 years old, they are recommended to stay more than 1 hour per day. Another thing is, like, if you're talking from 6 to 12, maximum 2 hours. And here, if you are parents or educator or guardians, it's like how I can control this. Just set a timer for them, and they would know something in front of them. They know they needed to see it, because the psychology is really important to see the time in front of them and the sound as well. And here at the beginning it will be difficult, but by the time they will get used to it.
Then we'll get used to it. No, so Dr. Hanan, thank you so much for your great insights on this. I really appreciate it. Since we are running out of time, I think we can take like only a few questions from the audience and just go over them very, very quick. But before we start that, I just need to remind everyone in the audience, there's a form in the chat. Please fill out the form in order to share with us your comments and feedback about this webinar. So I'm just going to go over the questions very quick. First question is, how can I implement eSport at my school? I think, Raymond, you already answered that. Another question is related to the budgeting, which also, Raymond, you mentioned it. Look, like some of the tools here are for free, and there's always an alternative. You don't have to purchase a lot of tools, and a lot of gaming engines are they have like a free license for educational purposes. Now, this is a very important question. What is the difference between gamification and game design? Raymond?
Gamification and game design. Well, I don't know if we have enough time to go into that, but I mean, often when we talk about gamifying something, let's say we're trying to teach math. I think there was a question I saw about that. You without even having to program games and stuff, you might want the students to understand how to calculate the motion of an object. Where the classic firing a cannonball out of a cannon, at this speed, how far, how high, and you can certainly present that to the students within the context of a video game. So let's say Angry Birds, right? I want to, so if we're trying to do a calculation of how far the bird will go, I mean, that's one way that you can sort of take the topic and you can gamify it so that they see there's a little bit of a different context to it. And of course, you can challenge the students by having competitions. There's some great platforms that you can load questions into, and it's almost like a game show. There's one called Kahoots, which is really fun, and the kids love it. You can load the questions in there, and they'll say, okay, calculate such and such, or which character is the protagonist in the story. And it is literally like a game show where the students can enter their values. Whoever answers the quickest, whoever answers it accurately get points. So that's a way to gamify. In terms of game design, now we're actually talking about creating the product itself. So, what is the feeling that we want the player to have when they play the game? Do we want to create a sense of tension? Do we want it to be more puzzle-based? Do we want to create something that is more strategy-based or resource management-based? Then we have to understand, okay, well, what are the mechanics we're going to use? Are we going to use a timer? Are we going to use limited resources? So game design is really more about creating that game itself and the elements that are required versus gamification, which is you can take any sort of academic subject and you can put sort of the context of a game around that subject to help. Sometimes I call it, putting some sugar with the medicine, right? I need you to study trig. I need you to be able to calculate this formula, or I need to come up with this algorithm. But let's do it so that functionally it will be a character that can move around, or it can collect things, it can craft things. So I hope that a quick version helps.
It does. It helps. Thank you so much. Well said, Raymond. Another important question here. It says, what can we say to those who believe esports are not real esports, not real sports? Dr. Hanan?
Could you repeat this, Doctor?
He's asking, what can we say to those who believe esports are not real sports? I think they are comparing esports.
This is a big discussion. It's well, there is some data you can show it and prove it with figures. It's like how many percentage. Already I mentioned people's who's playing video games or in esports in general, they have developed certain skills. It's like the strategic, being critical thinking compared to their peers who's not playing. If you, maybe he mentioned it, I know maybe he's referring to parents and so on. Talk about games, showing it and explain it. It is not physical exercise, but a lot of things going on with minds, and definitely minds is affects, it's part of the body. But I do understand if you're talking about, esports, it's not like physical. Yeah, it's totally different, but there is no comparison here. So yeah, I don't know. It's just difficult to answer this question. Go ahead, Doctor.
I think that there are a lot of similarities. For example, you mentioned the physical sports. Of course, even in esports, we have to focus more on the eye and hand coordinations, and we share a lot of similarities. In esports and sports, you have to train, you have to have a coach, you have to play in in teams, you have to exercise, you have to analyze your performance. So a lot of similarities between them. It's a competition again. You have to win, you have to lose, and winning the game depends on your skills, your esports skills, your gaming skills. So a lot of skills are there. So I would say esports, of course, they are sports. So this is a very important question here from Abdullah, and I'm going to conclude with this question. What is the first step as a teacher to introduce esports into the academic subject? And are there any specific programs that are useful for teaching esports? Abdullah, I would say probably the first thing is to get some training there are a lot of courses for teachers on how to become a coach or how to become a facilitator in esports. Probably this is your first step. You have to take this training in order to help your students form their teams and also organize the events and transfer the knowledge to them. So probably that would be the first thing to do, is just to get this curriculum, this training over how to facilitate the learning environment, how to become a coach, a K-12 coach, for example, if you are a teacher. That I think will help you in order to understand the ecosystem of esports, and also to organize the events at your schools, and also put students also all together in forums and organize the competition in general. All right, so I think we are running out of time. I really appreciate, that was amazing. This is one of the best webinars I've ever had in my entire life, and I was really honored to be the moderator for this webinar. Thank you all to all our speakers for their insights, and to our audience for the engaging with the critical topics. As we have seen today, I think the integration of esports, gaming, and esports presents a unique opportunity to engage students in innovative ways. But it also requires thoughtful integration and support and facilitation, of course. I hope you have learned something today. I hope you leave today with new ideas and strategies to implement in your schools and communities. And again, thank you so much for your attendance. And please fill out the form that we shared through the chat to share with us your feedback and your comments on the webinar. And have a great day. Assalamu alaikum.